Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. McGurkin. We're going to keep moving forward in our note handout for fingerprinting. As you consider the 8 types of prints, you realize after just a bit of thinking that, this isn't enough for all of us to have different fingerprints in the world. So, the thing that makes us different is actually, in addition to those different types of prints, also these things called minutia. So every print, when you look closely at it, has differences in how the ridge lines are formed, where they end, where they begin, how they're broken apart. And this is what actually makes fingerprints so unique. So as you can see from the information on this slide, in order for a print to be considered a match, um, the experts have come up with kind of like a 12 minutia guideline. We'll talk about a case where that kind of came into question a little bit later in this unit, but for the most part, most courts rely on that 12 minutia in common guideline. So in the FBI database that fingerprints exist in, no two individuals have more than 8 minutia in common. So that's an important thing to remember too, and that's why that 12 match guarantee is kind of, the key standard that courts of law follow. Okay, so remember, folks, even identical twins have unique fingerprint patterns, and this is why this is a key part of evidence. But we need to make sure we understand these differences in minutia. So if we take a look at the next slide, we'll look at some examples of minutia. So first of all of these lines that you see here represent what you would see in a ridge line. So anytime you have a ridge that stops in the middle of a set of ridge lines, that's called an ending ridge. If one ridge line splits into two, that's a bifurcation or a fork. If you notice, these two are pretty similar, but a dot is literally a dot within two ridge lines. If it's any longer than a dot, it's considered an island ridge. Anytime you have a connection between two ridge lines, it's called a bridge. If you have a ridgeline that breaks off and just kind of stops, not forming a fork like you see here, that's called a spur or a hook. If you have almost like two bifurcations that come together, that's called an eye. A bifurcation that bifurcates again is a double bifurcation. Again, we've talked about deltas a ton. And then you have a very uncommon type of minutia called a trifurcation. So notice this is 1 point dividing into 3. So here's some examples. You can see down here those things kind of in practice. A couple things that don't make it on the chart up here that are down here are crossovers. So you can see how the ridge lines kind of make an X. Um, you can also see down here pores. Fingerprints, if you've gotten your fingerprints taken recently by a digital scanner, they are accurate enough to pick up the pores that are found in your prints, and that can even be used oftentimes to identify the differences between people. It's really fascinating. So I hope that was helpful. We're going to practice a lot with these minutia patterns over the next few days. So ask if you have questions. Thanks.